Passion got your business off the ground, but passion doesn't pay the bills. Customers do. Klaviyo is the ultimate marketing platform.
Okay, we are live now. Hooray. Okay, welcome. We're continuing to paint this Elassomorph, and this is studio session number 5. Today I'm going to be looking at 2 blues. I've decided that I was going to look at 2 blues, and they are cerulean blue and French ultramarine blue. So, our learning intention is to name and use 2 blues. Okay, and here they are. This is cerulean blue, hue, and this one is French ultramarine blue. Now the reason this is hue is it's not the actual pure pigment. Sometimes they say hue, H-U-E, in it, when it's almost a student grade of a much more expensive pigment than cerulean. So this is like a synthetic copy of a true cerulean, but it's still a very nice blue, and I use it in my work. Another one which is much more familiar is this apparently darker, you see it? French ultramarine blue, which is just lovely. So, I have painted this practice piece using only those 2 colours. We can see the much darker and yet slightly warmer blue is the French ultramarine, and if you can see that the cerulean blue actually by comparison has a fairly greenish cast towards it. I actually think it's quite useful because when you glaze it with a yellow, it pops up as quite a nice green. So those are the 2 colours. Okay, so I could point to a colour and try to name it. Yep, it's cerulean blue, French ultramarine. These are recurring colours for me in my Elassomorphs. For instance, if you look at this little one, this is the Costa Rican flag, and this blue here is the French ultramarine blue, just pure, unmixed, no white, nothing added to it at all. In this cascade, which is coming from the guitar, the river is made of French ultramarine blue, but the highlights are made from a mixture of whites. Whites mixed with very, very little blue. Do you see the outline? The outline of the eye. So for this piece, the drawing was completed just using cerulean blue, and then it was blocked in using these other colours. So if you look at the eyeball, you can see that this eyeball here, a recurring motif in these Elassomorph pictures, is drawn in outline with cerulean blue. Even the iris is hinted at using the cerulean blue colour. But the black of the eyeball is a mixture of French ultramarine blue and the raw umber that we looked at in earlier episodes of this particular project. So you can see the base blue here is French ultramarine, and the area that appears to be black, including this chessboard here, is actually the optical mixing that occurs when you glaze blue on top of brown. The appearance in the eye, the colour mixing happens in the eye, giving a sensation of a black. So the colour is not mixed on the palette, it's mixed in the eye, the way that the eye perceives it, and so we call that optical colour mixing. Okay, so this work here has much more obvious examples of French ultramarine blue and cerulean blue hue. The cerulean again was used to draw or map out the drawing, and then it was overdrawn with French ultramarine because I was experimenting with it. Again, you can see the Costa Rican flag with a really dark layer, a very opaque layer really, of French ultramarine blue. But the hill in the distance is actually a guitar, and it's been blocked in, as this hill has here, has been blocked in using cerulean blue hue. I think we're getting familiar with them now. So let's look at our success criteria. If we scoot across, our success criteria is to be able to name and use French ultramarine blue and cerulean blue hue. Okay, so we're going to scoot over to the demo class, and here you will be able to see the mixing palette set up with cerulean blue hue on the left, French ultramarine blue on the right, and we've got a new dollop of titanium white for mixing these to see if we can nudge different tints out of the colour. So the work that we're working on, if we remind ourselves, we go back to the standby page, we can see that we're working on this drawing here, and it's my intention that we should put in the river areas. I'm in two minds about this as I mix up the paint just with water. And notice that the cerulean blue hue is a very stubborn paint. It doesn't want to mix. It could be that the paint is old, and I think I bought these paints a long time ago and didn't use them. In fact, I did my entire BA honours without touching these paints and by barely using any kind of oil paint in my studies. So there's a good chance that this is very, very old paint, and it's stiff and reluctant to mix because of its old age. Whereas I bought the French ultramarine blue at roughly the same time, and I find it still to be a very juicy and workable blue. I think as it is, it's quite a bold blue. I think it needs tempered down a little bit. But it's also got a little bit of a purple cast. It's got a little bit of a red bias within it, in my opinion. Other people may disagree. But when I look at it, I see a kind of red bias in it, and it looks like it could be easily nudged towards purples. So now that we've had a look at them, I've mixed it up just purely with water. There's no solvent in this at all in the form of water mixable thinner. It's just water. There's a chance in that case that the paint should dry out a lot quicker, because there is a rumour that the paint dries quicker with just water, and that thinner slows it down. Knowing that, I wish I had used thinner to dry out the titanium white that was laid down yesterday in yesterday's studio practice, because that is still a little bit damp to touch. It's a little bit tacky, and there's a danger that if I touch it, I may actually lift it or disturb the surface. However, one of the areas that I want to work on today is the top of the Costa Rican flag. And so it's a lot of the mundane, quotidian, just filling in. So here we go. And this is the real therapeutic part of it. It's very enjoyable, it's very reliable. Just to get straight into the act of painting. And easy to forget what's going on in the world outside. My brushes have been cleaned, but I'm noticing that they're wanting to flatten out a little bit. So if I rotate the brush in the paint mix that I've created, I'm just going to outline where the flag meets the other elements in the painting, just so I can see it a lot better. There. So there's a lot going on in the world, and if you just concentrate on your art, something like this, which takes up your concentration, is actually a very good distraction from other things that may be going on. You'll hear on Classic FM in the background there that Prince Philip has passed away today, aged 99, so it's a good innings. So, I mentioned before in the previous studio session that one of the things that I wanted to learn about this oil paint was how to be able to draw lines, just a long continuous line like this one here. So in a very short amount of studio practice, I've actually learned a little bit more about mixing the colours, and consequently reached my goal of being able to draw lines. I'm wondering what happens if the blue just travels over the black there, what kind of result happens. That's a fairly continuous line. I'm not sponsored by Rosemary & Co brushes to say any of this. This is just my studio practice at my home, north of Inverness. And I use Rosemary & Co brushes, which I buy online. I'm finding them very, very useful indeed. They hold a reasonable amount of paint. For being a thin, rigger type brush, they actually hold a reasonable amount. and part of that, as I say, is the well of paint is held within the belly of the brush. So these brushes have got good bellies on them, and they keep quite a nice fine point. But I suspect with all the drawing that I've been doing with the brushes that I'm going to maybe have to purchase more soon. I have very, very few art resources. So I have got a very, very small collection of brushes. But since I've made this decision to live stream my art practice, I've started painting a lot more, and the line work is actually having an effect on the tip of the brush. So I know that they can't have an indefinite lifespan, but I am using them up more speedily. In fact, of these Elassomorphs, I've got lots of different brushes that I've selected principally because I wanted to concentrate on painting birds, and in particular hummingbirds, which feature in these Elassomorphs. While I have these range of brushes, the ones that I seem to be using most at the moment are these riggers. They just really, really feel nice in the hand. They're well made, they deliver the paint quite nicely to the surface, which is another learning curve for me actually, because I don't normally paint on canvas board. And again, in 6 years of studying with the Open College of the Arts in my online BA honours, I only did works on paper. And so painting on this surface is a return to stuff that I occasionally did before I went into formal studies. So that's enough biographical stuff about me. I just like these brushes. It's such a nice feeling just being able to concentrate on nothing else other than the act of painting. It's very common at the moment to speak about mindfulness, and mindfulness is just really about being present in the moment, from what I understand about it. So one of the joys of art is that you can focus just on what is happening while you do what you do. And it's quite rewarding. Just actually for me, with my condition, which is ME, chronic fatigue, is I don't seem to notice the aches and pains so much when I'm painting. And perhaps that's because painting is a relaxing thing, so we tend not to feel the sensation of pain or discomfort when we're actually relaxed and happy. It's when we're tense is when we aggravate the sensation of discomfort. So again, you'll see what I've done is I've framed the outline, and once that is in place, then I can relax a little bit about the contour and just really concentrate on filling in the space inside without actually having to worry about going outside the lines that I want to respect. There are different ways to paint, but these Elassomorphs that I'm doing at the moment are very sort of colouring in bias. So you see again, there's the brush flattening out a little. So it's only by rotating it in the paint that I re-establish that tip that I need. So since the last studio day, which is yesterday, I finished off the chessboard, and then I put some highlights on the shoulder of the guitar here on the upper bout, B-O-U-T, of the guitar. So it's this curve on the side of the guitar here, the upper bout. And then I put in the frets by tapping the outside of each fret and then joining the dots. But it's given the kind of effect of, dots that have been joined rather than a uniform line. So I may not do that again in future. And then the tuning rollers for the guitar, I omitted to say, so they were filled in. And then what I did was I went in and reshaped the eyes by giving them these little white triangles either side of the iris. I did it in this work here and also in this one and on this one as well, and strengthened the white eyebrow, which this one has. So there's a tad fewer than 350 species of hummingbird in the world. And some of them happen to have this little detail, which makes their eye look very human. So I actually quite like that. So now I'm interested here on outlining the iris in this dark but warmer French ultramarine blue. So this is a tricky little element, especially since the white is still workable. Okay, so that's there. That sounds like Dido and Aeneas when I am late. can I drag that blue in towards the center? And can I thin it out? So what I'm doing right now is I've just dipped my brush in the mixing water. Okay. I'm now changing to a drier brush. I'm just trying to lift out and create a very soft transition from the dark outline of the blue and trying to bring that into the center to give the illusion of the detailing that is often evident in the iris. But my main idea is that the iris here should be framed in dark French ultramarine, and then have the lighter patch, the cerulean blue hue. So each work that I do is helping to inform the next works. So it's something that I've learned from previous works. I want to try and reiterate in my newer works. I am concerned though that this is so heavily dilute that this may not actually take to the surface. So there may be problems with this later. So I may have to rectify that by going in with a very heavy amount of cerulean blue on top. Here's the pond. Again, I think what I'll do is I'll outline, but heavily, the leaves which are framing this guitar. And actually the flattening of the brush there has become a virtue. There, that's good. It wasn't really my intention to draw ripples, but it's just occurred to me while I'm painting this in that I could make the highlighting a lot easier if I leave gaps showing through. And I can add in the kind of interference lines that I spoke about in an earlier installment of this. So when I imagined doing this live stream today, I just really thought about filling in the whole pond area blue, and so I could then, working from this dark blue, add lighter blues on top. So I could add light upon dark. But I quite like the idea of these interference lines because it gives another layer of complexity. And hopefully visual interest as well. There, I got so carried away with the painting I forgot that I was supposed to narrate for anybody who might be listening in. And here we have the waterfall. Takes over here. This section here, I just want that to drop away. I'm not sure how plausible my interference lines are, and so I can always change my mind. And not convinced, so maybe go back to the original plan. There. I already feel a little bit better that I'm sticking to my original plan, so instead of changing it at short notice. I'm very much happier with that. So the other thing I've decided to do with my live streaming is there is some post production kind of editing that can occur, but I've decided just to do warts and all live streams and not really worry about editing it afterwards, because uh, because energy is such a premium for me. Having chronic fatigue syndrome, is that I only really at the moment have about 3 hours of good energy, and if I exceed that, then I pay for it later. And so I've just resolved upon this kind of strategy that what you see is what you get. So I don't know who is ever going to watch these live streams. Actually, it's almost like a diary for me, because without them, I would probably, just not do as many as I would. So actually, having to do a live stream incentivizes doing them. So it gives me a purpose to do them. Let's see how that brush is just flattened out there. Yeah, I'm happier. Really what I like to do with these, with my paintings, is just really to block in and then take it from there. So I'm just about out of my French ultramarine blue, which is fairly much as intended, because while this area here, what I call the pond, is dark and I intend to put light on top of it, the far away waterfall is supposed to be the exact opposite. So I'm noticing that this highlight ripple here kind of reflects what's going on here. So I might put a little bit of blue in there for visual interest, and also to kind of harmonize it a little bit. Thematically. So, okay, that's that done. And that's the French ultramarine blue. But now, I want to go into the cerulean blue hue and allow myself the chance to practice the opposite of it, which is, this will be the lightest blue, and then what I can do with this is, while I intend to lighten this, I can practice darkening this blue with glazes. So, that paint's very heavy. So that would be a lot more easy for me to manage if I was using a bristle brush, but these are sable blend, and in a sense what I'm doing is I'm almost using my oil paints here in a watercolor way, almost watercolor.
another statistic point, we gave 5,493 speeches before his retirement in August 2017. Now, one of those 800 organisations of which he was patron was the Globe Theatre.
I didn't want the... You know, I have drawn some elements on here, but I don't want the work to be outlined like a cartoon. Now, with these works here, yep, there's some outlining on there. I'm quite happy with these. These are a little bit more playful. These are a little bit more naive, a little bit more like folk art, these ones, so I don't mind that. But the intention for this work here is for its taking itself a little bit more seriously, and I want to see about that curve a little bit more there. Taking myself a little bit more seriously with this work, and see if I can improve the finish and do much more, just do everything a little bit more polished, I think is what I'm trying to say. So there isn't really a place for the kind of cartoon elements in it. So here I have a fairly light coloured water source, which I want to darken with the glazes. And here I have a dark area, which I'll want to lighten. And just see which I like best, so I can learn how best to paint the things that I want to paint. So this waterfall needs to fall a little bit more acutely, like so. There we go, have a proper descent. And the last of the checked parts of the chessboard can be seen dropping off down here, and that will help frame the fork element, the fork tail of this hummingbird. There. This paint is just so creamy. It's just really, really nice. So I've tried mixing it. It's reluctant to mix. Like I said, possibly through old age, possibly through, it's just a feature of that particular paint. It's just a characteristic of that paint, that it's going to behave like that. Just like titanium white takes a little bit longer to dry, maybe this paint is just a little bit more stubborn. But it is going on beautifully creamy, and I like that. Now there's something else that I want to do. That's a 2. I want to make a kind of reflection here on the pupil, and I want to have it so that the curve of the eyeball is seen in this particular detail. Just to come down like this. So I'm drawing it with water so I can see before I apply the paint. That this is the effect that I want. But also I'm planning to do the throat here, the gorget of the hummingbird, which is typically multicoloured and normally reds and purples and all those kind of colours, quite bold colours. What I want to do is put down a base of black, and then once that is dry, I want to layer on a myriad of colours, and then do what I've done here, which is a sgraffito technique, and scratched back. So whereas here I've scratched back to reveal the white of the board, here I would scratch back to reveal a black outline, so I'd get the strong colours outlined in black. But I will find that very difficult to contrast the black of the pupil here with the black of the throat if I do that. So what I've resolved upon is putting down this kind of reflective area here. So like there's a little reflection going on here. And when I thought about it before I approached this today, now as I was imagining a kind of Batman symbol. So that kind of thing, a little kind of Batman symbol. It's not meant to be a Batman symbol, just that's the kind of effect that I'm looking for. A blue-grey would have been ideal. I'm beginning to suspect that is almost enough. Put that little detail there. Okay, and then with a much stronger mix, for the iris part, which is this part here. Oh, it's very dry. A lot of mixing to get the consistency right. So it's going to run off the tip of the brush correctly in that drawing style that I like. Okay, it's good. Hopefully you can still see that. I'll move these other little examples out of the way. Okay. Working towards my hand and dragging towards me. Again, the flow, it's not flowing exactly the inky way that I like. But that might just be a feature of this particular paint. So, outline the pupil for definition. That sounds like Cantaloupe's Songs of the Auvergne. What I'm doing is I'm just laying the brush down and almost taking a print of it there, because I'm experimenting and I'm not entirely happy with the way it's going on. But it will give me a chance to demonstrate the kind of sgraffito technique I was telling you about, which is just lay down some paint and then scratch into it, like so. And I'm kind of hoping that that will give me the kind of nebula effect that eyeballs have, that the iris has. And then I mix up some more paint, try to make it more juicy, introduce a little bit of white into it, which has a kind of greying effect, you can see. Okay. Now this time working in from the outline that I've made in little inward strokes. That area there will be under cast shadow of the eyelid, so happy to lose a little bit of detailing there and to concentrate on having it here. Okay, and again, the same idea, sgraffito, lay down some paint and then draw into it. Like so. Okay, maybe some more paint. Okay, let's see. Again, some more sgraffito, which wasn't part of the learning outcome today. That's okay. And maybe if I go in with a band of white, as a kind of area there. And we're doing so, create the kind of iris effect. And then try to disrupt it a little bit with Sgraffito. Okay, that's alright. Back into my French ultramarine blue. Try and bring parts of this in a broken manner to the inside. And again, disrupt it a little bit. Disrupt. So break it up a little bit. Since the white has a greying effect on that blue, I think I might just try a little bit more with this. It's still my number one. Yeah. And go back into the pupil.
Memories from a famous film of 1944, Henry V, starring Lawrence Olivier, reading water music that was the Henry V suite, played by the Philharmonic Orchestra, Christopher Warren Green conducting. I chose them to mark Prince Philip's connections to 800 charities and organisations, one of which was the Globe Theatre in London, of which he was patron. Now, a brief update of the news, after which my tribute to the Duke of Edinburgh continues. On your radio, on Global Player, and on your smart speaker. Play Classic FM. This is Classic FM. From Global's newsroom, I'm Polly Jones. Members of the royal family have been sharing tributes to the Duke of Edinburgh, who's died at the age of 99. In a statement, Buckingham Palace said Prince Philip passed away peacefully at Windsor Castle. These people have been paying their respects. I just thought it was really important.
Now this is going a lot lighter than I thought. So I have heard that when using water there is a thing called colour shift. And so, let's see, with colour shift it turns out that light colours dry darker and dark colours can dry lighter. So if that's the case, I would like this light colour here to dry a little bit darker, just a fraction darker. I'll try to clean out the brush so that I can then lift out material and smooth.
Flags are flying at half-mast across the country, and tomorrow there'll be a gun salute at midday. From Global's newsroom, you're up to date. This is Classic FM. Brooklyn. The Duke of Edinburgh. This is the Classic FM concert with John Sushi.
Okay.
Unbelievable for me, this special Classic FM concert continues with a look back at the long and extraordinary life of the Duke of Edinburgh. I mentioned the 800 charities and organisations he was involved with. I will celebrate one of those that he was most proud of,
Try and
Marines, in just a few minutes after.
correct that line a little bit. Make it just a little bit more symmetrical on this side. Which involves going down a little bit there. Right off the top. Okay. See if I can smooth out some of these areas. That's it. I am fairly happy with that today. And hopefully, when you're creating art, try not to be hard on yourselves and, you know, disapprove of everything that you do. Try to appreciate the good that you're doing. Just going to reinstate the tops of these stepping stones, the A minor, E major stepping stones that are there. As I kind of got lost in all the darkness. And a texture and foliage brush, and just try and take the edge off that a little, soften the edge a little. Yep. Some dry brush, lifting out. That's okay. We are indeed just blocking in at the moment, so we can be quite happy with that. And just notice there's another area. So I think that's it for today. That's been a reasonable session. We've done well to learn 2 blues. The darker but slightly warmer French ultramarine blue, and this lighter cerulean blue, but this version is the hue, so not the actual pigment, but synthetic variant, copy of the true mineral element. Okay, so that looks a little bit like a drop. There was some white, a little reflection on it. Okay. So after a switch off, there may be a little bit of tidying up, which I will of course point out to you at the start of the next session. Some more sgraffito there in the direction of the waterfall. There we go. Thank you for joining me on this installment. We'll remind ourselves what we tried to do. So this session was called Elassomorph, the studio session number 5. Our learning intention included the ability to name and use two blues. So if we look at this picture now, we should be able to identify the two blues. The darker of them is the French ultramarine blue, and the lighter one with a kind of green bias is the cerulean blue hue. How do we know if we've been successful today? Well, we should be able to name the difference between French ultramarine and cerulean blue hue. We've spoken about some of the differences between them. So, thank you very much for joining me. That's been just over the hour. Thank you so much. I hope that this has been useful to you, that some of the information has helped you, and that this encourages you to be creative in your own home. Okay, thanks now. Bye.